So video 4, the radar and the satellite. Now this nicely follows on from what we've discussed in previous videos. The radar is largely the victim reactive person. Not judging anyone, just literally giving it an identity in some way so that we can understand it. The satellite is more the observer. So if you consider the radar, and then we tie that in with the inner critic, the negativity bias, and survival, a picture begins to emerge. Because what largely happens as we go through life is there's a hand reaching out into a small part of the future, worried about what could go wrong, what people might say. If we do this and this happens, that would be a catastrophe, so maybe we don't show up. So that radar, any blip on that radar sends a signal to the security guard to either stand your ground and fight or to run away. And the other option will be to freeze, but that only really happens in immense fear that overwhelms you. Most of the time, people run. There's a thing on the map, could be a problem, avoid it. Now the satellite, if we think of the map, we are in it. We are in the forest looking at the trees. We can't actually see the forest, we only see what's in our immediate environment, and we therefore make predictions based on what's happened previously to kind of fill in the gaps. Yet the satellite, as opposed to the radar, has a plan view from, let's say, 30,000 feet. They can see the entire map and see what's going on. And this gives us a very powerful insight because we get to, for the first time, understand the very nature of our reactive suffering, i.e. the cause and effect. For example, road rage. Something happens. You've got about 2 to 3 seconds before Hulk mode kicks in, where the mist rises, and it's a few choice words, fingers out the window, or we give chase. Does this ever serve us? Be honest. Have you ever felt better after road rage? Or a little bit worse after road rage? Now momentarily, letting steam off could be good. But there's that slump after. Because what we realise is we have just been played by the randomness of the world. Now if there's a near miss, I get it, I got 3 kids. I say a few words myself every now and then. I'm no Zen monk, I'm not here to pretend or impress anyone. If there's a near miss, I'm in the zone. I'm a human, I've got emotions. But most of the time, I understand it from the satellite perspective rather than the radar. No amount of screaming at that person does anything because they can't hear me. And then I realised the danger of filling in the gaps. And we need to really pay attention here because quite often we fill in the gaps and there's one of 2 outcomes. We become the victim or we become the hero of our own stories. So by filling in the gaps, what if the person that pulled out in front of you did indicate, but their bulb has blown? A wire has become disconnected. There's some kind of electrical or mechanical fault. So they were doing exactly what they were supposed to do. But something meant that the outcome of that wasn't what you liked. You filled in the gap and became the victim to that tragedy that's now unfolding with you as the only actor, actress, on center stage, under the spotlight, in pain. You picked up the hot coal. And that's a very important concept, because there's hot coals everywhere that could potentially rip us out of this moment and immerse us up to our neck in quicksand. Suffering, by analogy, pain. Now these hot coals don't have anyone's names on them, but we still randomly pick them up. We see error, we have to fix it. Somebody says something, we disagree, they're wrong, we've got to prove a point and win, maybe beat the chest. Let our honour prevail in some way. Being honest, when you zoom out to that satellite perspective and look at the actions or reactions that you have in specific situations, do they serve you? Are you happy with them, or are they embarrassing? Would you like alternatives? And this is the big one. If your friends and family were at the cinema watching the story of your life, of all the little bits you do, would you be in the front row or a million miles from that place? Not calling you out, just being honest. Because road rage rarely serves anyone. Yeah, you can let steam off every now and then. If you're a black cabbie in London, I'd imagine you've got your work cut out. However, keeping your peace is more important than losing it at every opportunity that pushed you and got a way, way, way bigger than expected reaction. And it's the same with other things. Conversation. Stuff that we take personally that wasn't about us. Things that have happened years ago which we still keep going over and trying to resolve in some way. We just keep opening the wound. So the difference, to close, the radar is self in pinball machine or the woods. And all you've got is the several trees in your proximity. And this is largely how many people operate in the world. A thing comes in, we don't like it, we react in a big way, causes pain or suffering. We feel bad for a little while and we carry on. The satellite, the radar, big difference. When you consciously evolve from being in it to understanding it, i.e. moving up to the satellite, something very, very interesting happens. You see yourself third person in specific situations and get to choose a response. Now this takes time. I'm being honest here, it takes time. You actually have to catch yourself and score a win. I'll tell you why. Because in a stressful situation where you potentially are in fight or flight mode, when the washing machine is going round in the stomach, the red mist is rising, there's anger there, there's that sense of, got to do something. You only have one default response, which is largely unconscious, reactive and habitual, until you spend the time and effort required to create a secondary response. Now this rings true because if you look at the last 20 times road rage was in your world, they're probably all exactly the same, with you feeling exactly the same afterwards. But it's not just the acute aspect of road rage. It's the chronic aspect of you now snapping at work colleagues, being indecisive, potentially making mistakes or bad choices that then impact what you eat during the day, that you then bring home to the family and maybe snap at the kids. So that small event that blew up and then disappeared stayed with you for potentially the whole day in some form, not just mentally, physiologically, biochemically. Very interesting thing to consider. So what can you do? Learn to pause. Now, I don't mean pause the world, you can't stop it. I mean pause. When a thing or a person or an event happens, does something, and you feel that need to react and jump in, stop and ask yourself, how does this unfold so that I am not a victim that hurts and potentially overreacts? How can I make, that's an important distinction, how can I make this unfold in a way where I keep my peace? I'm in control. I don't let habit jump in and ruin the moment and potentially half of the day that follows. Two things happen there. One of them is very interesting, and you've got to experience it to understand it. The longer you think of how you would like a thing to unfold, the more it dilutes down into almost being nothing. So you've got a bang on the radar, there's a great big flashing red spot. Brain focuses, deal with it. Not yet, it's not that important. What are you going to do? Let me think, give me some time. It's still there, yeah, but it's faded, isn't it? Perhaps it doesn't actually warrant a response. What happened? Instead of shooting every potential target and picking up every hot coal that was never for you, we keep our peace. We are well aware that by stepping in and using pathway A with our natural response to situations that stress us, we feel bad afterwards. Only through practice can path B appear, and that's mindful awareness. That's using this amazing prefrontal cortex that's evolved over many, many years, driven by choice. So instead of being this robot, thing, feeling, act, pain. Thing, no. Let that emotion dissipate. Stop jumping in every time the external world pushes a potential button to get you to jump, scream, dance. Because that isn't being in control, is it? Control comes from doing what serves you long term. Is it in your best interest to go nuts at something and hurt for 12 hours after it as a consequence? Probably not. Is it in your best interest to be in control most of the time because you know the consequences of reacting and you choose to act instead? And that action could be no action, because the amount of things out there that are best left alone is unbelievable. None of them are for you, none of them are because of you, and none of them are about you. Now this may deflate you a little bit, so I apologize before saying it, but you're not the center of the universe. You are not so important that the whole thing happens because of you. And if you are silly enough to believe that you are, then everything that can happen to you will. You will take the world personally, fight it the entire time you are here, and suffer. And I'll give you some insight into that. No amount of anger fixes a cracked phone screen or a punctured tire. The train wasn't late because you were on it. You are not in traffic, you are traffic. The road wasn't closed because that's twice they've got you this year. The world is random chaos, cause and effect. For us to take personally every part of that we don't like and believe in some way that it happened to us is to adopt a victim mentality that will keep you in pain for the duration of your existence. And what I often say to people is surrender. Exhale. Stop standing in the river and saying, stop. I need you to make sense and obey me because I can't deal with a world of chaos. I need to understand it. It needs to be consistent. Good luck with that. It doesn't. You are okay with the ebbs and the flows and the waves and the wiggles, because it would be very boring if it was all straight lines and predictable. This is an unknown journey, a speck of breath between arriving and disappearing. Enjoy that adventure while you still have time.